I dream that there are teeth growing all over me, everywhere on me and in me, like cysts or bone spurs. They're loose, but I can't remove them because I have no hands.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Something Rotten. Listener, it's getting towards the end of the year. We have done some big series on some big games, and so we thought, what better way to close out this year of Something Rotten than by doing some very small, very interesting indie games. My name is Jacob Geller. I'm joined by Blake Hester and our lovely guest, Bijan Stephen. But Blake, you talk first.
Well, no, you've introduced the guest. It would be rude for me to take this moment to, put myself up top. So, Bijan, you please talk instead.
And yet, you did it anyway.
Well, if I don't talk, they'll think I'm not actually here. I'm sorry.
That's true. No. Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to be on podcasts. It's always fun to be on video game podcasts. Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me.
Frequent Fortnite collaborator, Bijan.
Frequent Fortnite collaborator.
Right.
Yes, I think I would say that as well.
The man who is responsible for the victory royales in both of my charity streams for the past 2 years.
Couldn't have done it alone. Couldn't have done it without you.
Today, we are talking about a game that takes an hour to beat, which personally is how I would love if all the games we played for this show went. But this is why we're doing this season at the end of the year, to give ourselves a little break and also talking about some concentrated rottenness. When you have a game that's 4 hours long, it gets spread out. A game that's 10 hours long gets even more spread out. 60 minutes, that's the good shit.
It takes an hour. It takes an hour to beat? Are you sure?
It takes longer than an hour to beat if you're me.
I have quite the tale to tell of my journey aboard the Iron Lung, if I may.
Look, I would love to hear it. I was looking at development of this game to try and see if I could give some kind of some background. Really, not much. It's developed by a guy named David Szymanski, who is notable for making the game Dusk, a big kind of fast classic boomer shooter type title, and then some other weird little indies.
Recently featured in Game Informer, and a big piece we did on his work and other boomer shooters.
Oh, well, so yeah, what did he have to say in that?
Oh, he didn't talk about Iron Lung at all. I did not even know he made this game until I booted it up yesterday. It was totally completely under the radar for me. I don't know. He just talked about why he liked boomer shooters, why they thought they were interesting, why they're making a comeback. I thought it was all kind of fascinating. It was all kind of reactionary to the 2013 Prestige game. So I was like, yeah, that checks out. I don't know where Iron Lung fits into that, but nevertheless,
it's quite a game. It feels retro in the same way that those shooters you mentioned feel retro, which is, I think, maybe the connecting thread here. But
the sense that I get from this game, which is totally me reading into things that maybe aren't meant to be read into, but it seems kind of like a hobby game in between bigger things, in that if you go in the game's files, you can find pictures of a shooter that it looks like he's working on, and kind of behind the scenes stuff. And so it kind of seems it's something that he made to take a break from first person shooter development, which I imagine is much more involved than a short game like this. And yet this game has fucking popped off in a way that few tiny indie horror titles do.
Well, I agree that on the surface, or below the surface in the Iron Lung's case, below the surface, it does feel like maybe something he worked on in his spare time between projects, but also it is a weirdly ambitious project. I know the game didn't ship with all the lore stuff you can find on the computer, but that lore is really intricate and well thought out. So I don't know if that was a reaction to the game's popularity for him or something he was already cooking on, but beyond just the single setting of where you kind of move around, it does seem to be an ambitious project he created here.
I think it's conceptually very ambitious. I think it feels weirdly, even though it's only it took me longer than an hour to beat, but we'll say it's an hour long. But yeah, weirdly for a game that's that short, it is very self-assured. It knows exactly what it's trying to do. Also, everything is weirdly polished. Obviously the graphics are low poly retro stuff, but the sound design is great, the music is great. I found the navigation extremely tedious, but I understand that it's to build tone. Like, moving around in the world is hard, and I always like games that do that. Like, Death Stranding made walking a mechanic, which I always found, like, really interesting. Anyway, I could go on for a minute, but I feel like there's more. We gotta talk about what the game is, right?
Yeah, well, I wanna talk about the setup, because I feel like so much of the power of this game is, like, before you start playing, it just hits you with a couple screens of text that feel like almost comparable to like Blade Runner or something, in like how much work they do to just set up the fucking world, where basically it says all life in the universe on all habitable planets disappeared one day. The only things alive are people who were on spaceships at the time. Mm-hmm. Those spaceships have this cursed existence looking at barren moons to find natural resources. You're like, oh, wow, there's a lot going on here. Then the next screen is like, you're a convict. You're being sent down to a moon. The moon is covered in a blood ocean. You're going down in a submarine that wasn't meant to go down into these depths, so it's being welded closed. Good luck. And just like the amount of work that does, I feel like really can't be understated in like setting the tone of this game.
In the Something Rotten pantheon, is this the hardest opening of all time? Because I'm obsessed with it. Like, this opening screen, it's fucking 3 tiny paragraphs that like establishes more than any game I've played recently.
Also, look at the font and the color. It's like this like computer terminal green on this like red background because it's a blood ocean, you know. But also, I mean, like, it's like I think I would argue it's probably because this game has to do all of the narrative setting up like immediately because it's an hour long. Like, you gotta be efficient, and that is some extremely efficient putting you into the player character.
It's so great that you don't find text logs in the game. You're not like, stopping the kind of tension to like read more about these things.
But you can. Like, there's a computer terminal that like completely expands upon the lore of this game.
Okay, I did not know about this.
Yeah, same. I was vibes only, just following the vibes.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to talk about my experience of playing this game, because I've been down deep under the blood ocean. But yeah, you can figure out like theories on the extinction event, the 2 like political factions that control this world, who you are, other submarines that have been lost under this blood ocean, different moons that exist out there. Like, that terminal, you have to play kind of like a text adventure with it, where you're looking up specific keywords, but you can learn all kinds of lore. As I understand it, that terminal was not shipped with the original release of the game, and it was added in a lore update, which it makes me wonder, like, was the creator, David, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, was he always working on that lore, or was the lore a reaction to the game's popularity? I'm not really sure, but like, it's not an original. Like, it didn't come with the like 1.0 release.
That is fascinating. Yeah, I played the game yesterday, and maybe because I had played it early when it didn't exist, I did not even think to interact with a computer terminal.
Look, I'm a journalist. I'm asking questions. I'm getting answers.
I think, yeah. I don't know. I thought I was sucked in by the vibes and the tone. I was like not looking at it. Actually, so it does it's too early to do a comparison, but it does remind me a lot of Lethal Company, a game that I just started playing yesterday. But that's separate. But I think, I don't know, I can only imagine like the lore update happened because people were clamoring for lore. But also,
what I'm thinking,
if you were in the files and you saw like plans for a shooter, like it might be a shared universe shooter thing. You know what I mean? It's like, here's all the backstory for the game that I'm going to make next. But I mean, I don't know, you got to call him up and ask him, I guess. This is, you're a games journalist, Blake. You get in there, dude.
Hey, David. What's
hey,
up?
Mr. Markiplier.
Hey, we got to talk about
that's
that.
The other
shit.
thing that's funny.
That's the other thing. So, okay. So, kind of as a meta text on this episode, Bijan, when we first thought of asking you on, the most recent thing that I knew that had happened in your life is you had been laid off from your previous job. And I thought, hey, someone who's going to have time to be on a podcast.
That's absolutely correct. Right instinct. Keep following that.
But then, just a couple days ago, I learned from my good friend Mitch Goldstein, who is also your friend Mitch Goldstein.
Shout to friend of the pod.
My enemy.
Your contract writing at Valve, which makes me one. Have you done writing for video games before?
It depends. No, the answer is not really. I mean, it depends on if you count all like the small games I've been making for a while. But like that's if you're the answer is if you're looking for a job in video games. Then I have no experience. No, like other than this job. Otherwise, yeah, maybe. Like if you're trying to employ. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to like make myself sound unemployable, but no, I haven't really done much of it before, especially not at this level.
So the reason that I bring it up is kind of to get your now in-industry perspective on this thing, just because it's like video game writing is weird, and I even from an outside stance, like writing for a video game is so strange because it has to like mesh with all of the other things that the game is doing that maybe have been like pre-decided before you even get to start writing a story. And so like I don't know, do you think your work has given you any additional perspective on this Iron Lung opening other than like it's a banger?
That's a really good question. I think it's funny that you asked that because you're correct in identifying all of those pressures on narrative that come from like, you know, game designers and like the design of the game, like the world of the game, the art of the game. And you're right to identify narrative sort of like having to slip in the gaps because that's how it is in a lot of places. It depends on the place. But it's funny because Iron Lung is like a totally separate genre of game. Like that opening did not have to be a banger. There were no gameplay constraints, no design constraints. Like he was just like, nah, I'm going fucking hard.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like a professional opinion goes, I think it's extremely economical, which I always really respect. And I like that it gets out of your way before, like you're in the world immediately. And then it gets out of your way, and you play the narrative. And I think in smaller games, especially because the gameplay in this game is like very, very simple. You go to X and Y coordinates marked on a map. There is a briefing. You have to press B to look at the briefing, which I did not figure out until I ran into a few different walls. Is what it is. But yeah, it's like I think the narrative of the game is. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting and fragmented and. I like the idea that you as a player have to, like, you are the story. Like, the story is sort of happening around you, but you are within the story. Which seems kind of simple to say, but, like, it's a really hard trick to pull off. Because I do feel like there's a level of abstraction in a lot of games between the player and the narrative. So that opening does a lot. It sets all that up in, I think, a really smart way.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's like one of the... an interesting parallel you could draw with this game is it is almost like playing... a text adventure in that like everything that's happening is imagined, you know, that like you are kind of imagining yourself in a space that you cannot see, and the game is kind of giving you hints that space is there, but they're not visual. They are just kind of, it's like the beeping on your compass telling you you're close to a wall, and then you imagine a wall close to yourself. But like it is, you know, just kind of the opening is so vital for that because it like it gives you what that outside world is that you're imagining. And the game could have said, you're in the Marianas Trench and you're, you know, subbing around and you're going to go get stuff. And it still would have worked. But I do think that like so much of the tone of this game comes from like what you have imagined based on these like couple paragraphs that it gives you at the opening.
It's not just, I mean, it is imagined, but it does seem like it might have been mapped out in XY space because every time you're close to a wall, you can take a picture and see the wall. Like,
oh, it is. It's there, which is actually one of the cool behind the scenes things of the game that we can talk about. But Blake, it's been long enough. Please tell us the story of you with this game.
I'd like to cast your all's memories back a few months when we all sat upon our markedly dry thrones and laughed and guffawed at the folly of billionaires who boarded a underwater vessel and were crushed like a Coke can sent to the recycling plant. And then I'd like to cast your memories back to last night when I, still feeling better than them, got into a submarine myself and said, surely I'll be able to beat this game in an hour, as How Long to Beat told me. And then what did I find? But I am no better than the billionaires. I was crushed hundreds of times in this fucking submarine. I crashed into every damn wall in the near vicinity of the intro of this game. Yeah, I found it fucking inscrutable. I could not wrap. I I started this game. The intro text comes up. I'm like, hardest thing of all time. I fucking love this game. It's my new favorite game of all time. Then I did the act of playing the game, and I said, why make this? Why would you design this? I had to look up on Reddit someone writing a detailed comment on how to play Iron Lung, how to use the map, how to read coordinates. And I said, I got it. And I got to the first checkpoint. I took the picture, and I was like, that's crazy. And then I tried to go to the second checkpoint. And I crashed, I died, and the frustration rose and rose.
Much like the blood ocean in your submarine.
Exactly. I'll be honest with you. I waited until last night to play this game because I was like, it's only going to take an hour. It's easy. And I had a fucked up night. I did not get home until late. So I'm playing this at like 11 p.m.
Nah, dude. Nah. Terrifying.
So I said, I sat here and I thought to myself, I said, is this the way I want to encounter Iron Lung? This game I've heard so much about that, my hero Markiplier has invested his life savings into creating a film of. And I said, no, this is not the way to come to Iron Lung. This is not the experience. So I thought, what is the experience most people come to Iron Lung? Like, how do they encounter this game? Well, of course it's Let's Plays. So I turned my computer off. I walked the 3 feet to my couch. I pulled up a commentary Let's Play of Iron Lung, an hour long, and I watched it, the whole thing. And it was awesome, dude. I am so glad I did it that way. Because if I would have gone through the trials and tribulations of playing this game, I would be on this podcast right now being like, fuck this game. Like, it just was not for me. It's like, it just was not my thing, and that's fine. I recognize that. But I sat there and watched it like a movie, and it, like, played out like a horror film for me. Like, I was fucking scared watching this thing. Like, being able to, like, put my frustrations aside and, like, kind of role play in the video, being like, what would it be like being in that thing? And just knowing I'm fucking dead under here. Like, the worst possible way to go out was awesome. And then when video was over, like, I went down the rabbit hole. I pulled up an iceberg video. I looked at like a video breaking down all the text logs that explain the lore of the world. And at first I was like, do I even want to know lore? And what I found was it was very well written and interesting. So hats off to David for like expanding his, world that totally worked as a mystery in a way that I thought was like creative and like satisfying. Like I was totally into it. I think it was like the right way to play it, and I'm actually very glad I decided not to play this game last night. It was awesome.
I do feel like that was my one complaint, was like, I thought the design was interesting. I thought it all worked, it all hung together.
Yeah.
But moving around the world is fucking tedious. It is. It's like you look at it, it's you going back to fucking middle school or high school geometry, being like, all right, X and Y coordinates. All right, how do I get here from here without bumping into anything? And it's like the main action of the game is, aside from one interlude, you like pressing an up and down button and changing the angle of your sub to go different directions. And like, looking at a map and going to it's like geocaching, but in underwater in tunnels in a video game. And that, like, the act of doing that is not exactly fun, though you do get better at it the longer you do it. But again, it works because it's hard to navigate. It's like this oppressive atmosphere. I once, a colleague told me, like he was telling me the hardest thing to do in video games is tone. And I think this, I'm, it's a thing I think about all the time now, but this game like fucking nailed it. And having like tedious to use movement is one of those tools that made the tone so oppressive and made it work so well. On the other hand, as a game, not that fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I was so unequipped for this game. Last night, I literally Googled which axis is X.
Oh, boy.
And then I found out on the map, it just tells you, and I just didn't see it. But, Jacob, you know what I love watching on the internet?
Blake, I'm going to politely remind you we are recording right now.
Movies, cinema, all kinds of movies from all over the world. But for reasons not fully worth exploring here, streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and the like have different libraries based on which countries they're being used in.
Is that true?
True as the day is long. That's why I use NordVPN to unlock my computer's location, allowing me to watch Netflix in America, Japan, Albania, the USSR, Constantinople.
Oh, I don't know about the last two, but that's really interesting. They added a time travel feature. So you're saying I could use NordVPN to watch all my favorite anime before they come to America?
Sure can, but that's not all. believe it or not, bad actors are doing their darndest to steal your information online.
Wait, what?
Yep, and you're helping them by not encrypting your data.
Oh my god. Annie, lock our doors! I'll explain later!
Yeah, don't get caught being a dummy and use NordVPN to protect yourself from malware, trackers, and ads. It'll also notify you if someone leaks your information online, and it helps you avoid those pesky CAPTCHAs and block lists.
Okay, sure, but is Nord tracking or sharing what I'm doing online?
Never! Your traffic is always protected with their robust encryption, and there are options to make sure your data is never exposed.
Okay, well that sounds great, but how do I sign up?
Well, Nord sponsored this episode, so we have a special link. Go to nordvpn.com/rotten, and from there you can get Nord apps on all your favorite platforms, and one account can be used on up to 6 freaking devices. They also have 24/7 customer support and a 30-day money-back guarantee if, for any reason, you don't like it.
Okay, I'm signing up right now. Let me just type this in. nordvpn.com/rotten.
Probably the best thing you've ever done online, Jacob. Go to nordvpn.com/rotten and sign up for NordVPN to watch all your favorite movies and, importantly, protect yourself on the information superhighway.
What about the information normal highway? Does it have to be super?
I'm looking for it. Like, yeah, I mean, we encounter this a lot with Something Rotten games. Less so recently, but like definitely I think we talked about it playing Kane and Lynch 2, which is a game we adore, but is not fun or particularly good. Manhunt to a degree, though I don't know if that was necessarily intentional and more just Rockstar made bad games back in the day. Yeah. But like, you know, at what point does tedious game design work against like the atmosphere it wants to create? And for me, Iron Lung is like, it is not worth it for me to hit my head against this wall because it was working against the atmosphere and the setup that I was really enjoying. And once I took that away from myself and watched someone who clearly knew how to play it, like I was completely sucked into the atmosphere. Like I was wearing headphones watching it, and like every sound outside that fucking sub like terrified me. And I think if like I got to that point myself playing it, like the tedium, I wouldn't have given a shit, right? Like my brain would have kind of turned off to a lot of that stuff. So it's like, it's definitely a mileage will vary type of game. The popularity of it implies like people can deal with the tedium, but yeah, it's a weird thing.
It's interesting to hear y'all say this because I don't think well, I'm sure I did not struggle as much as you, Blake, and I don't know. This is my second time playing it, so like I kind of knew how it worked more, but like I really, you know, while I was not going like Yahoo while piloting my sub, like I do think that the locomotion of this game is like, I don't know if I would have gotten the same thing out of it watching it, because like for me so much of this game is like growing more confident with the controls and then having the game subvert that, you know, because it's like when you start out it is very hard to understand where you're going or what you're doing. You haven't set up like one of the kind of satisfying things I found in this game is like figuring out in your head just like tricks to navigate better,
right?
Is something that I found where it's like at first it was like literally checking the map every 3 seconds to be like, where am I going? And then you grow to kind of be like, okay, I'm gonna aim myself at like a 45-degree angle down. I'm going to go until like Y hits 670, and then I'm going to, you know, it's like you can kind of like make a to-do list for yourself that makes navigation, but then like the game knows that you're doing that and decides to fuck with you in ways that it couldn't do at the beginning because you like didn't even know enough to know how you were being fucked with. And so that is all to say, I actually find the navigation really interesting in this, but I do think that it is really similar to, Blake, I think you made this comparison, and Beej, you've made a video about this, but like it is a QWOP or like getting over it type game. Like it 100%. It is like the point is that the game is going to give you something that should be easy to do and make it hard.
It's really interesting hearing you bringing up like your experience, Jacob, but like my question is, you are a bit of a pervert, right? Like you like to play extra hard games. Like that's like kind of your thing, playing things on ultra difficulty.
And I love graphs. I just love X and Y coordinates.
Oh God,
so like I'm glad to hear your perspective, but listener, please keep in mind he's a bit of a deviant pervert.
And I'm a sociology major, so I just love looking at lines go up and down.
I mean, look, I felt, Jacob, I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. Like, it works, and I think I said this earlier, but it works with the game design, and it works to set the tone. I just didn't enjoy it that much. Although, I have to say, even at the end, when I was getting better at navigating and stuff, because it wasn't, like, that hard once you, like, figure it out. You sort of, like, move around, and it's not even 3D space, either. They, like, put you down to a depth, and you're not going anywhere but up and down. Like, you're going at 2 dimensions, not 3. So it's not even that difficult. But yeah, after I sort of got used to piloting the sub and encountered some of the weird shit that happens, it did feel satisfying, but I was also just like, I can't think of a way to make this particular mechanic better without taking away from the rest of the game. So, it's good. You just have to get over the hump. And if it's like a thinky game. It's a vibes game. You go in for the vibes. You don't go in for like the other shit.
Yeah, I think that's totally the case, and I'm really glad that we had the 3 different experiences we had here. And Blake, I'm glad that you watched a Let's Play of it, because I think you're right in that's how most people. I mean, it's like I think that all of us, even in the industry, would kind of underestimate what a big pull watching people play horror games specifically has. I mean, this is the same reason that like the Five Nights at Freddy's movie made $100 million in its first weekend, and everyone who saw it was like under 30. That it's just kind of like young people love to fucking watch other people play horror games.
It's something so fascinating because like as someone who works in the games press, like we do not pay enough. I was thinking about this literally last night with Iron Lung. Like we just pretend that doesn't exist, and that's not like a major cultural force right now as people like Markiplier, like respect to The Ring, listening to The Big Picture, them try to figure out why Five Nights at Freddy's was a success. I was like, we're not equipped for like who is taking our jobs, which is like Markiplier played this game and it probably made David Szymanski a millionaire, and like I think that's really interesting because when you play this game, like it is inscrutable in a way I've never played a game before. Like I've never played a game like this, and like contrasting that with how popular it is right now and how into people are into watching it, and the lore is like really fascinating. Like it's something I expect from like a Resident Evil, which is a fun series to play, but something that like it's making you need to be a geography major to understand is like mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, well, and it's like Five Nights at Freddy's is a game series designed to have a big iconic scary face pop out at you every 5 minutes, and then the streamer that you're watching play it goes wah, and then they can be like, did you know the lore of this big scary face is actually this? And it's like this game doesn't have any of that shit. It's like it is all build up to one thing happening at the end.
I don't know of any major real coverage of this game in like game press outlets, and yet it's like one of the biggest.
Our friend Renato wrote a story about it in Vice or in Waypoint, but that's about it. That's all I could find.
Yeah, it's not like at Game Informer we're like checking what Markiplier and Jacksepticeye are streaming, and it's like we probably would double our traffic if we paid more attention to that shit.
Yeah,
but here we are,
and now there's a movie, Iron Lung, coming out starring Markiplier. Dude, it's happening.
I watched the trailer last night. It better than I thought it was gonna look.
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, the notable thing about that movie so far is it's breaking the record for the amount of fake blood used in a movie, which it better be. That's all I'll say. Like it if it's not breaking that record, what are we even doing here?
It is a blood ocean. You have to have oceans of fake blood. But I think you're right. The rise, because I used to cover streaming at The Verge, and like the rise of like the increasing cultural impact of streamers and YouTubers on like the video game economy, I think is really, really fascinating, because it's like now part of marketing plans. You have like somebody who's gonna make a video about your game or play your game on stream, and you're gonna see a bump in sales. Like I think the last time I saw this happen, most recently, I guess, was with the finals. Did you guys ever play that?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We played it together, Bijan.
Yeah. But Blake, do we play together?
Oh, we did not.
No.
Unfortunately, I did not get to play it.
It's so good. But it was like, this was like on stream and it blew up immediately because like I think it was Shroud was streaming it or something. Like some of the bigger people were like, this game's great. And I think the main thing is like those people, they give you an excuse to like take a chance on a game because either you trust I guess it does replace the gaming press in a very specific sense in that like, one function of the gaming press is to recommend things that you might not otherwise see. But I do think, I don't know. I think the game is really interesting because, as you guys mentioned, it came like fully formed out of nowhere. There's no tutorial. It's like anti every like modern game design thing, every modern game design trend, It's just like, all right, like you're in a sub, you're a fucking convict. Go find points of interest and take pictures of them.
Well, you know what it reminds me of is fucking Silent Hill 2. How, like, granted, a more approachable game, but like Silent Hill 2 is not approachable. Like, it dumps you in. It's like, hey, you're the biggest freak on earth. Also, good luck trying to figure out how to play this fucking game. I still barely know how to play that game. Like, it's the difference being, like, Silent Hill 2 feels like it could come out when it did, and people would just accept it because games didn't cost as much back then, and things were a little more experimental in the AAA space.
Things are just like not as tutorialized. Also, games came with manuals, which
that's the other big thing. Yeah,
and granted, this is not a AAA game. Like, this is a indie release, but it doesn't have an indie hook. Like a lot of indies I go to have like that that mechanical hook, like Neon White, which I know is like a bigger scale, but it has that mechanical hook. Like you are in it for the speed. And Iron Lung, it's like, I don't know, fucking deal with it, bucko. Like, find your own fun in this thing.
Well, and I wanna go back to the idea of like watching kind of streamers and how it affects games like this, because I think the finals is an easier example of you see someone playing a multiplayer game, they look like they're having fun playing it with their friends. You think I should play this with my friends. This game it's essentially like, in the way that horror functions kind of like comedy in that, like, it builds up to a punchline. This game is essentially a long build up to a punchline, and the idea of watching someone play that and then being like, I should play that joke again is, like, weird. And I think there are a lot of, I think a common discussion in game development spaces is, like, is this actually helping our bottom line? Like, in kind of story-focused things and experiential things, are people going to buy it after watching someone else play it? And I think data-wise, the answer is usually yes, but like it's weird to think about, because it's not like I want to see what I can do in the finals. One person playing Iron Lung basically looks like everyone else playing Iron Lung. Like, there's not that much room for player expression in it.
Yeah, I also think, part of it could be like, you watch a Let's Play of it, and you're like, my friend likes horror games. They'd probably like this game, and you recommend it to them. They buy it, and it's like, I think you get the network effects kind of at that scale, millions of views, etc. But yeah, I think it's really hard to say because, again, narrative games generally not that fun to play after you've seen what happens in them. And this, I would say this is like halfway between like a purely mechanical game and a narrative game. Like you have both sort of ticking back and forth. But yeah, I don't know. I do not think I would replay it, but I would definitely like to watch someone else play it. Like,
for sure,
and see them freak out.
I don't think you can I'm with you, Jacob. Like, now that I've watched this game, like, there's no universe where I'm playing it, but I don't think you can like discount the experiential nature of just media. Like, I think even if people watch through this, they'll want to find it themselves. Like, especially with that fucking computer terminal, they'll be like, well, I thought of a keyword. Maybe it'll make something pop up. I've been listening to, not to bring up The Ringer again, I've been listening to the rewatchables recently, and I've rewatched 4 movies in the past week based on just like listening to it. And it's like, now I have to experience it myself. And I think like for a lot of people watching Markiplier play it, they might be like, well, now I have to know. Like, it's not a word of mouth thing because you're watching it. But I think like you can't discount how much people watching those streams just want to feel it for themselves.
Also, especially in games, which is an experiential medium. Like that,
exactly.
That argument does actually, I think, carry more weight here.
Yeah. One thing I will say boosted the game's sales that I found out yesterday by a insane amount.
Oh yeah.
Was the Ocean Gate thing. Yeah. David tweeted a graph of his sales, and it looked like it sold more in that week than maybe it had sold in its entire history. Like, it was crazy.
Well, I'm curious about. Let me see that if there's a link to the tweet in the thing, because I remember seeing that graph and then remember thinking, I don't know if he has the axis being as long. Talking about graphs is like, does it show when Markiplier he's actually only showing 5 days of the game's sales, as opposed to like a year, which we would need to see. But yeah, they did certainly spike.
I would say it's a morbid graph to just look at and think about. It's like it really says a lot about us as people.
Well, okay, so let me ask y'all a question. I think none of us would board a submarine piloted by a billionaire dipshit with an Xbox controller. But if it was like James Cameron, noted submersible expert, who was like, I'll take you down. This is about as safe as a submarine can get. Do you want to go down, like a mile below the ocean to see some cool shit? Would you entertain that possibility, or would you just be like, fuck no way, I'm getting in that thing?
Dog, I'm popping a Zanny and I'm going down with Mr. Cameron, Like, we're going to manage the anxiety, we're just going to go down there, see what's up.
Look, I survived 2 bouts of cancer and addiction. I'm not dying with James Cameron.
That's so
not
real.
Like, that's not going to be what gets me. Like, when those billionaires blew up, did any of y'all feel any sympathy? No, because they were down there being idiots. If I go down there and a sub blows up, literally my mom is going to be like, hey, he's an idiot. He shouldn't have gone down there. That's not how I'm dying. Like, you're out of your mind. Fuck that shit. I'm staying. I don't even like taking baths, man. Like, I'm taking a shower where there's no hope of me being submerged in water. Ain't no way. No.
Jacob, what about you? Would you going down with James?
I think I would. I really, it's just like in the same way that I am obsessed with caves and it's like I would like to go skydiving at some point. Like I want to do the crazy thing, and I think, there are a lot of submarines that don't explode. Is all I'm saying. We only hear about the submarine that does.
It's because the other ones just don't. Like, there's like a whole certification thing. There's like 5 guys who like know everything about subs that certify all the subs. Yeah, one of them was actually on that submersible. He just liked diving.
Okay, so now there are 4 guys.
Yeah, it's like it's actually a really sad thing.
Jacob, in like the next 10 years, I'm gonna have to fly to North Carolina to go to your funeral because you died a Looney Tunes death.
a big anvil fell on my head.
Yeah, because you were in it, you were spelunking, and there are anvils in caves, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
Stalactites.
Annie's gonna call me and AJ, and I'm like, oh my god, what happened? And be like, he went skydiving, and he didn't want to wear a parachute. Like, what are you doing? Why are you going down there?
He was just gonna try and land in a big net. They went to land on top of a circus tent.
Did you see there was a guy who actually did that?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. One of the craziest.
Why would you do that?
Travis Pastrana, dude, he rocks. Shouts out to Nitro Circus.
Okay,
friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
Would y'all go to outer space?
Nah.
Me neither.
Yeah, for the same reason.
See, that's my thing, Jacob. You're fucking Wile E. Coyote ass.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing. I would not do it. I mean, I have a loving partner. I'm sure she would be sad. But like, this is a thing that like you do before you have children. You know, if I had kids, I would not go in a submarine. In the same way that I think like everyone who climbs Mount Everest who has kids is like, that sucks. You know, it's like you this is an activity to do while you're childless. And it's like the saddest thing about the that submarine blowing up is there was like a kid whose dad pressured him to do it with him. And it's like, that's the one you feel bad for.
Right.
Because like his dad is an idiot. He's not.
Right.
And so, you know, it's like, yes, but only now when I have like relatively little. All I would do is make my parents and family and partner incredibly sad, but I wouldn't leave children fatherless.
I would not go to outer space for what it's worth.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think we're getting there. I don't think it's going to be a civilian thing.
I don't think so.
Not before climate change murks like every country on the planet. Like, it's just not happening.
However, in the lore of Iron Lung,
yes,
people did, and they colonized Mars. And check this out. Don't know if y'all knew this. Mars's population actually grew over Earth's at one point before the Quiet Rapture.
So here's a question.
What's up?
Would you rather have been in the Quiet Rapture or not.
Oh, 100% yes. Send me up, baby. Disappear my ass.
Yeah, right? Like, you don't want to survive after the apocalypse. You just don't. Like,
no.
I remember, yeah. Anyway, it was one of those things where it's like life gets infinitely harder. But if you just like disappear, no, like that's it. Like, I don't know.
Unless they all went to like literal hell.
Then it seems
Doom. Like a possibility.
Then it's Doom. That's it.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Let's talk about. I think one of the interesting things about this game is it is so minimalist that everything that it does that is not in the literal just like adjust the course, look at the map, take pictures is awesome. You know, it's like this game gets more mileage out of a steam pipe bursting than like most games get out of like throwing a giant $10 million monster in your face. Yeah. You know, just the like the mileage that this game can get out of a groan or the lights flickering or whatever rule. So did y'all have any kind of like favorite moments in this game?
It was terrifying. Like the oxygen warning, I was like, every time. The first pipe freaked me out. I think my favorite one was the fire. Yeah. Because I was so pissed off because I died twice to the fire, and then I was like, wait a second. There's got to be a trick here.
My favorite, I think it happens twice, but the first time fucked me up so bad, was you just out there exploring, everything's going well, and then you have a like a radar that tells you how close objects are to you.
Oh, yes.
And depending on how close you are, you know, the frequency of the beep and the light is quicker. And it for like 1 second, there's just something on it, and it's going beep, 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 and then it's gone. It fucking scared the shit out of me.
That fucked me up.
Yeah, terrifying. You also, your sub gets hit occasionally, which is like, I can't deal with that.
you're well, so, okay, so this is my favorite, and this is one that I think is maybe lost if you're not actively controlling it, is like, all you were doing in that game is staring at your coordinates and staring at your graph, and those 2 times the sub gets hit, you move on the map.
Yeah.
And so it's like suddenly you're like, you know, in my head I'm like, okay, I'm driving west until like X hits 300, and then you get hit and suddenly you're at like 650 and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? You know, it feels like it totally betrays the one thing that the game has given you, which is like you are going to know where you are.
Holy shit. Yeah, I had no clue about that.
Yeah, it's if you're not looking at the coordinates, man, it's like freaky. Also, I like how the numbers go up and down like gas prices. Like it's the same animation.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
I think the fire one is great because, and this is actually something that that Renata wrote about in her piece, is that like when the fire goes off, it is during a period of navigation between 2 photo points that are pretty far away. Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to be turning around to look at the back of your sub. And so you're just like looking at your map, looking at the coordinates, changing your position. And then just at some point you're like, what is that sound? And you turn around and the whole back of your submarine is on fire. But like, I think part of the reason that it works is that like you don't notice it for so long, and then you kind of have the like secondary realization of like, oh, it's been on fire for minutes, and I have just like not realized.
Because it's kind of a soothing sound. It's like, oh, this is a new sound, I don't have to worry about it because it's not one of the freaky sounds outside of my sub. Yeah. And then you realize, for me it was like I realized the room was getting brighter, and I was like, wait a second.
I would talk about the pictures, which you can take pictures at any point in this game. It's almost always the coolest thing ever, even if you're just like taking a picture at a wall or the red abyss, I guess in this case, of the blood ocean. It's like, I don't want to overstate it, but I feel like it's like the strongest part of this game's entire art design is just the visual look of these pictures, which is like grainy black and white, and occasionally there's just some like Lovecraftian object out in the distance. Like, it's incredible. I would hate to see what they look like, just the normal 3D assets. I'm sure they look goofy, but
this is exactly the thing though. Like, your brain fills in the rest of the picture because you can't make it out, and it's more scary than anything anyone could have come up with.
It's so good that it's like the picture is just so shitty that you're just like, is that tentacles? Is that like tubing? You know, it's never clear if it's like organic or if it's like the ruins of something that used to be there.
So the 2 that fucked me up, One, the eye, which we can talk about, the great horror
yeah.
moment. But the one that like really fucked me up is there's a picture and it's just like clearly a building.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
you can see like bricks.
hey, dude, it was the first moment I like stopped and considered this as a place and not just like the moon from that Junji Ito story where the moon licks the earth. Which one is that? Hellstar Remina. But like the idea that this had been a real place that like humanity had existed in was such a like weird existential fear for me that like kind of put the universe. Does that make sense? Like it kind of like made me realize this wasn't just a horror world. It had been like a real functioning place that like knows nothing now but doom and terror.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things that does is it makes you realize that the opening narration is kind of subjective. You know, that it's like it's not fact. It's just what people have like figured out so far. Because what it says is like all inhabited planets disappeared. You know, all that's left is this. But then you find this shit, and you're like, maybe that's wrong. You know, like maybe this. The quiet rapture involved this ocean of blood being, because it's like we haven't even talked about it. It's like, what does an ocean of blood mean? You know, like where does that come from?
Clearly Evangelion reference, bro. Clearly, extremely clear. It's LCL. But no, I think it's maybe all the rapture's blood went into this ocean. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
Like all the blood in those people could be there. But I think to go back to the pictures for a second. What they reminded me of instantly was photos from like Chernobyl, where you can see the camera sensor being pelted by radiation.
Yeah. Oh God, that's the best shit in the world. I mean, the worst, but also the best.
Jacob, you would definitely go to Chernobyl, wouldn't you?
I've read about tours, and they're like, you know what? As long as you don't touch like that pile of boots, you'll probably be all right.
See, no, not for me. But yeah, no, I think it's. The game has like it. I think it's also very strong because it just gestures at the narrative, and I think it's the strongest part of the narrative is that what you just said. It's like they don't know, dude. They're trying to figure it out. They sent you down there to help them figure it out, and it's your mission is like, all right, well, I'm in a death trap sub, and this might be a one-way ticket. Like, I guess I got to do my job.
Your mission is a fallacy. You are like this is capital punishment, effectively.
Yeah. Well, you are a convict, so it does justify that.
Like
something rotten pro capital punishment.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No, but like the photographs, the study, the science of it that you're sending back is like realistically secondary. It's like whatever group sent you down here. It's like if you get something great, but if not, like we've executed you, and it's clear in the story of the game. This is not the first time this has happened. This is something they do with convicts.
Yeah, you can actually find another sub. It's like an unmarked photo thing. I was looking up Easter eggs, but like you can find a sub that looks like yours that is just like on the seafloor.
Well, so that's a different sub. That's a scientist sub.
That's terrifying. Dude.
Okay. I haven't watched the icebergs. So
there's a text log you can read about the iron lungs. Which are like, if they send you down in those, they don't give a shit about you. You are just sent to die. If you send anything back, great. But the one you can find is that was not a convict on it. That was a real scientist, and they did not expect it to be destroyed. That was the whole thing. The lore of this game is really fucking cool, y'all.
I want to talk about the name of the game.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what an iron lung is?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, those things they put the kids in.
Yeah, well, it's not just kids, as it turns out. But once it's like, because this was a polio thing. When polio destroyed your lungs and your ability to breathe on your own, you got put in an iron lung, which breathed for you, and you had to stay there for the rest of your life. Have you guys ever seen one in like real life?
Yeah. Well, not in real life, but like there's still a guy that uses it. There's like one guy left who uses an iron lung, and I've seen that stuff.
So I in my childhood science museum, there was an iron lung just in there. And for a while when I was a kid, that was like the scariest thing I'd ever seen. And then I graduated to learning about nuclear waste and radiation, and that was like way scary. I had nightmares about that for years. But yeah, like seeing one of these contraptions and realizing kind of the joke of the game is that it's the inverse. Like you're sealed into this thing like an iron lung, except it's not a life-giving thing that you're doing. You're not on a life-giving mission. You are not helping anyone, really. You're just in there. And you're fucking stuck. Horrifying.
Yeah. I think thinking of it as the inverse is a really great way to, because it's like the oxygen should not be ticking down in an iron lung.
Yeah.
Like that dude who's still in one is not in there because it like runs out of air in 60 minutes.
It's also like a fascinating concept to think that after the rapture, like governmental bodies would still be interested in like executing convicts. Like, I feel like that says a bit that it's like, well, yeah, we're still going to like carry out our systemic like oppression. Even after God has like kind of done a capital punishment on everything, like we're still going to kill prisoners.
So that is also one thing I found really interesting. The quiet rapture, like the name suggests that it's a government mandated. It's like something that somebody else came up with. It's not describing. It's describing what happened, but in terms that other people can understand, which I don't think retains necessarily its biblical connotations. Like I think from the positionality of the character in the game, this is just what it's called. It has no like valence really. Like it's not like they know that there's a heaven and a hell. Like they're not just sending you to hell. You know what I mean? I mean they are, but like in a more metaphysical sense.
I think it is quietly a very like political game, and that like it is obsessed with the cruelty of your character being in the iron lung. And like,
yeah, I mean the fact it's like it is so pointed that they say you're a convict, because they could have said you're a scientist, but like it is important to the game that you basically know as soon as you get in there that you're going to die. And I think if you were a scientist, if you were like an explorer, the game would kind of maintain, you know, it could do another trick, which is you think you're going to get out and you don't. But like by making you a prisoner and by making this sub so obviously like death trap-y,
yeah,
it is that feeling of like doomed from the beginning, you know, that it's just like there's no way this ends other than me just fucking choking on blood.
Right. And I mean, like most methods of execution, the cruelty and terror is the point, but this is like scary to a comical degree, right? This is like not the 10 seconds you have to wait for a firing squad to shoot at you. It is like slowly suffocate in a pool of blood for hours. Like it's horrible.
Well, as it turns out,
it's that thing of like one of my this is a very very dark, so apologies, but a writer I love, Nanakwame Ajayi-Brenya, who wrote Chain Gang All Stars this year, has a short story collection that one of the short stories is called The Finkelstein Five, which is about a man who like beheaded a bunch of black children with a chainsaw and then said like, I was defending myself, they were threatening. And the point of the story is like, is there anything that is so ludicrous that society would kind of break its ideas of racism or, you know, carceral punishment or whatever to say like this is absurd? And like in the years since that story has come out, there have been things that feel so close to that it's just like, nope, never. There is nothing bad enough that we would kind of like self-reflect and be like, we shouldn't do this. And that feels like the same idea as Iron Lung. It's like, this is the worst thing that you could possibly imagine, and like still no one gives a shit because we've decided that prisoners aren't human.
Yeah. I mean, there's a line in Hunter x Hunter, which in the Chimera Ant arc, which if you didn't get through it, I don't blame you. But it goes hard, and it's like this guy being like, there's not like. He's talking to one of the ants because they're ants that have superpowers now. Anyway, long story short, this guy's like, he's dying, and he's like, you have no idea of the bottomless malice of the human heart. And I was like, oh yeah, that's why that's the whole thing. That's like humans have an infinite capacity for cruelty, and when you apply imagination to that, it gets worse because we are imaginative beings.
Let's talk about the last 5 seconds of this game.
Oh boy, I just played it. I just finished it. Like not 5 minutes before we started this recording.
Yeah. I think it is one of the best executed and kind of like a proof for the validity of jump scares, basically. You know, that I think jump scares in general are kind of, for whatever reason, we've got it in our mind that they're cheap and they're not real horror, to do jump scares. And I think the care that this game puts into making you so afraid of so many things. You know, by the end, your sub is literally filling up with blood in that, like, to get to the controls, you're, like, wading through waist-deep blood. And your oxygen is running out, and the lights are flickering, and the outside, you know, it sounds like the sub is being crushed. And then you get to the last, you know, you're getting to the last photo point. You're thinking, please, I just need to take one more photo and I will be done with this. I'm so close. And then you turn around to snap the photo and a giant eel shoves its way through the back of the sub and then it goes black and says Iron Lung. And it's like, it is just so perfectly executed.
Yeah, I did not like it personally. This is also where I should disclose I'm like not a huge horror person, like not a huge horror games person either, specifically because of the interaction, because you're like, oh, I'm doing it, oh no. And so the ending, I was like shocked, not shocked and also not surprised, and also like I jumped like in my chair because it's just, you're right, it is extremely well executed, and because the entire hour leading up to this has been like this nonstop barrage of threats that you can't really identify or see or really do anything but like kind of feel. It's like almost cathartic because it's like, oh, finally it's over.
Yeah. Yes.
I thought I knew how Iron Lung ended, and I didn't. For some reason, I thought the game ended with you taking the final photograph, and the picture is basically like a mouth coming at you. Like in the photo, which I don't know, like then maybe it would crush, or I don't know what. That's what I always thought it was. I don't know where I got that from. Nothing prepared me for Froggy in here coming through. I was like, man, can't wait to see this photo, and then nearly threw myself across the room when that motherfucker popped in.
Genuinely horrifying.
and it's like, it doesn't look good if you like pause it. It's not like the model is particularly scary. It looks like the eel from Mario 64. Nice. But it's just like,
I would like to give credit where it's due, though. We just talked about Alan Wake 2 on our Nebula exclusive feed, somethingrottenpodcast.tv/Nebula, or wait, nebula.tv/somethingrotten. Listen to it. Something we talked about, hard as fuck title card drop. Iron Lung's title card drop at the end.
Oh, extremely hard. Holy fuck.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So good.
God. I was just so glad it was over. Like, Jesus Christ, dude.
The other thing that one of you mentioned, but we should talk about, is in the middle. The other like big scare of the game is you're not at a photo point, but there is something that is like so relentlessly kind of dogging your submarine that you just are like, well, I guess I should try and take a picture of this. And you take a picture, and it's a giant eye, and then a second later, something like smashes into the side.
But it's like the only clear picture in the entire game.
Yeah.
Which is also why it's horrifying, because you're like, so the other thing is, I was playing this game, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to finish this, because I was finding the controls tedious. So I looked up the ending. I knew what happened. It was still terrifying. Like, I knew all of the things.
What's interesting about the ending is you can actually go to any of the points on the map in any order. So you can go to the final photo spot and take that picture and see what it actually would be. And it's like a building that you can see like windows and shit, and it's pretty fascinating.
I found that out today because I was looking at like they're kind of clickbaity videos on YouTube that's like, does anything happen if you take this photo last in Iron Lung? And the answer is like, no, nothing happens.
You get an achievement that says you've played this game before.
Yeah.
So that was pretty good.
But I do like, there's one photo, probably the weirdest photo other than the buildings, is like at kind of the end of probably the scariest like drive of the game, which is just an extremely narrow corridor where like your indication for being too close to the walls is flashing on both sides of you, and so you just have no choice but to like keep going forward. And you take a picture of this thing called the Entity, or something, that's like what the achievement calls it, which looks very in the book Annihilation, which was made into the film Annihilation, there's a lot of writing about like fucked up starfish and just like starfish doing all sorts of crazy shit, and it's like that looks like what you're taking a picture of.
Rocks.
Yeah, this game is good. It's also like, even though like sort of you listener know the general story of the game and like what happens in it, like you should play it if you haven't, because it will fuck you up. Like you can't, like the oppressiveness, the tone, the vibes, Like, it doesn't matter if you know. It's still scary as fuck.
Yeah, which I guess is, our answer to, like, does streaming hurt it? Because, Bijan, you watched the ending, and you still played it and it scared the shit out of you.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it was horrifying. Oh, there is if we've already talked about the ending, we should talk about the last text screen, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. What does it say?
Like, essentially that your mission didn't matter. Like, yo!
Yeah.
The expedition ultimately raised more questions than answers. Satellite images showed pieces of the SM-13, that's new, scattered all over the bottom of the trench as though it had been torn apart by some huge beast. The wreckage cannot be reached at this time. No photographs have been recovered. The stars shine pale as bones. The moon is a lifeless corpse. Its ocean a gaping wound. The universe, what's left of it, is dying. But somewhere in the void, there must be hope.
That's the stars shine pale as bones is such a good line. I remember seeing that and just being like, God damn.
Here's the thing, David.
Yeah.
Good writer.
Y'all know the end of Barry Lyndon, the Kubrick movie, where at the end of it, it says, epilogue. It was in the reign of George III that the aforesaid personage lived and quarreled, good or bad, handsome or ugly, rich or poor, they are all equal now. Where it's literally just like, they all died and it didn't matter. It's the end of it. And I thought a similar thing with Iron Lung.
That's Eddie's monologue from Silent Hill 2. Whether you're pretty or you're ugly, doesn't matter when you're dead.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is being made into a movie.
Theatrical
question mark.
In fact.
Like, truly a theatrical release that's been...
Yeah, that's been confirmed. Markiplier is a member of SAG-AFTRA, so apparently it also got delayed by the strikes.
Markiplier is directing it too, which I don't think I knew. He's the director.
I know very little about Markiplier other tthan he's a guy who plays video games. I don't know what would...
He's your coworker.
He is, as is Mr. Beast and, Ben Shapiro. But, like, what is this? What is this as a movie? Like, what do you do to this story to make it a movie?
Here's the thing. If he does it smart, which I'm looking at it on Letterboxd, it has five characters or 5 people in its cast. Already a mistake as far as I'm concerned. You need one. Jacksepticeye is one of those people, so we're rocking with all Jacob's coworkers.
That's right.
But there is decades of precedent for single location horror films that are scary as all get out. A film we talk about a lot on the various Blake Hester Cinematic Universe podcasts is Inside, which technically takes 90% just takes place in one house, and it's the most terrifying thing.
Yeah, Bo Burnham. I've seen it.
No. Wrong Inside, but I guess technically, yes. A movie I thought about a lot while playing this was the movie Buried, starring Ryan Reynolds, that is set front to back just in a coffin buried underground that he is in, trying to get out and people trying to find him. I think what they do is just they never leave this sub, not a single time. And then they just find the creative ways through sound design, just make shit outside. But to get into that character's head, it's going to take a lot of careful writing to get there. But like, never leave that sub. Like, make the viewer feel as trapped as the protagonist of this film. Like, never let them know peace outside that sub.
I think that's a really good instinct. I also think this could work with more characters in that, like, I assume what they've probably done is like made like 2 of these characters talk and give you a mission briefing and then weld you into the sub, and then it's just down there because there's a lot of lore to the game. There's all sorts of stuff happening outside, but like, I think a very smart way to do it would be like, here's a peek at society. And now you're leaving it forever. And like, now you're just Markiplier in a submarine that's been welded shut.
The thing I really don't want, though, is like periodic flashbacks throughout the game.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the kind of more obvious, like the kind of 127 hours type thing, which worked for that movie. But like, I don't know. I would love for the movie's introduction of the lore to be as hard as the game's, where it just puts up a fucking Blade Runner screen of like, here's the deal. But like, I don't think it will do that, and I think it'll explain it more in the story, which I don't know if I'll vibe with.
I will say, aside from Markiplier, who's credited as the writer, who apparently is the writer of 8 different movies.
Yeah, none of them have been a theatrical. This is his first movie theater movie.
Yeah, interesting. The creator is the co-writer. It's him and Markiplier writing this, so
could be good.
could instill some confidence.
I mean, are you gonna? So the question is, are you gonna see it?
Yeah. Day one, we're going to cover it on the podcast. We're going to get Markiplier on the podcast. Maybe David, he might be easier to get. But yeah, I'm seeing it day one for sure.
I'll see it day one with all of the 16-year-olds who are in the theater.
Yeah, dude, I'm going straight to the theater. I'm making AJ Moser come with me against his will, and we're going to watch Iron Lung at 9 a.m.
Oh my God.
Queens, New York.
It's like, as much as I think there is the potential of kind of undercutting what's interesting about the game, this is a cool choice to be like, I want to make a movie. Like, I am more interested in this than the Slender Man movie or the Five Nights at Freddy's movie or any of those other ones, which I think are much more obvious picks for adaptation. Like, I like that this is so weird that, like, you have to do something weird with the movie because there's no obvious way to do it.
But, like, also, I had a better experience watching the game as a film. Like, I think it will lend itself very well to being a movie in a way that, like, I don't see how I haven't seen the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but just, like, when I heard about it, I was like, I would much rather play that. Yeah. Like, the experience of Five Nights at Freddy's feels more like a game to me, but I think Iron Lung would work totally fine as a movie. I think it's just going to, like the game has, take a lot of thoughtful atmosphere building and writing. That's all it really needs. I think it'll translate just fine.
I almost wonder if they're gonna like have two characters in the sub. So, because like one person in a sub, you have to like do something to externalize the monologue, right? You have to, journal entries or like talking to yourself, that kind of thing. I sort of wonder if it's him. It's gonna be him and that the woman who's listed on the credits. I forget her name, but just down there talking to each other like a one-act play, kind of.
Yeah.
Which here's what they do: one person, multiple personalities. One played by Markiplier, one played by Jacksepticeye.
The ultimate YouTube collab.
My kudos to Markiplier, just in that, like, he's going, just by the very nature of the source material, he's gonna have to make a weird fucking movie, and that's pretty cool for such a big YouTuber to be like, I'm gonna make some weirdo shit. Like, I think that's pretty rad.
I mean, it would be really funny if this is like the first real hit of like YouTube Hollywood thing. Like I don't know. I think it's got a shot.
Jacob, can't you just walk a few desks over and ask him what he's doing over there?
Yeah, tap. Can I co-star? Can you put me in that blood ocean?
Yeah.
Bijan, thank you so much for coming on, playing this pretty unpleasant game, and talking about it with us.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to plug at this time?
There would have been a time when I could answer that. I don't really have anything to plug other than if you are a game developer and you need some writing under a contract basis, hit me up. Because now I am a professional.
Can you tell us, not anything about the game you're working on or whatever, but like genre, specialties, like what you like writing about? Because this is a part of your kind of work that I'm not familiar with. I don't like what you like writing.
Oh, that is a good question, and one I can answer. I really enjoy. I mean, it's funny because I feel like I've been writing a lot of different stuff that I wouldn't necessarily think to write, and it's been really interesting just to explore different kinds of characters. But I mean, if you go back and if you look at my itch page and the games that I've like put out, I'm a sucker for like narrative, like characters like getting to know each other and themselves. But I think that's the kind of self-indulgent stuff that doesn't work in the industry. Well, it does, but you have to find the right place for it. You know what I mean? I spent a lot of time in Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, because that's like where all the writing happens, is like in like that's our CMS, is like spreadsheets, and it's just funny because it's like a much different kind of experience. But it's really interesting. I feel like I'm learning a lot, and the people I'm working with are great. It feels really exciting to finally like get to work on some stuff that other people might finally care about. That's the big one.
The dream of all writers.
No, it's not. It's actually it's a little bit nerve-wracking to think that at some point my work will be seen by other people and scrutinized because it's a game. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Because like people care about video games in a way they don't really care about like music. Well, not music, but like books and stuff.
Yeah,
it's just it's interesting to like think that feel exposed already without even having anything out. But no, But
we're looking forward to it.
You'll definitely be hearing more when I can talk about whatever I'm working on.
So the next game that we're going to be playing is another little horror game that I would describe as 10 times scarier than Iron Lung.
Oh God!
Great.
It is the game Anatomy by Kitty Horror Show, which is one of my favorite games. Also, one of the scariest games ever made. Blake, can't wait for you to play this one.
Jacob, are we playing any not scary games coming up? I guess the season after this.
After this.
Yeah. Okay. God,
it's still
man.
technically spooky season, bro. You gotta lean in,
Bro, we have really written ourselves into a corner with this Something Rotten podcast. Man, we play some dark shit.
but
fuck.
It's got to be interesting at least, you know.
Hey, this podcast has introduced me to 3 of my all-time favorite games, so
Incredible.
it worked out. It worked out
Huge,
that way.
great hit rate.
Absolutely.
Iron Lung, No More Heroes,
No.
and
Not
Manhunt 2.
not those 3. Not even close. All right, take us home,
look.
Jacob.
For Blake Hester, my name is Jacob Geller. You've been listening to Something Rotten, and let me just say, the stars shine pale as bones. The moon is a lifeless corpse. Its ocean a gaping wound. The universe, what's left of it, is dying.
Or as they said, the stars are bright down in the heart of Texas.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Bye.